what are the myths that the culture believes about economics? So there's several myths. Let's start with the first myth I want to talk about, and that is the heaven on earth myth. What's the heaven on earth myth? This is the myth, sometimes called the nirvana myth. This is the myth that says that if we could just get the right economic system, we're going to have heaven on earth. We're going to have a utopia. And the reason why socialism doesn't work is because the right people haven't tried it yet, right? If we were to try it here, yeah, I know it didn't work in the Soviet Union. Yeah, it didn't work in communist China. It didn't work in Cuba. It didn't work in Venezuela, but it'll work here if only we could try it. Okay? This is a myth. You are never going to create a perfect system. There is no perfect system. I mean, capitalism is the worst system you could have, except for all the other systems, right? It's been said, democracy is the worst system you can have, except for all the other systems. There is no perfect system. The question is, what system brings people out of poverty the best? And it turns out to be regulated capitalism, free enterprise. And so when people are out there going, look, if we could just figure out a different system, they might be thinking in their minds about a heaven on earth system that nobody's thought about yet. Well, that's not the real way you can solve a problem. The real way you can solve a problem is compare capitalism to its live options. What are the other options other than capitalism? Socialism doesn't work. Communism can't work. What other options are there that can work? You can't compare it to some pie in the sky heaven on earth. You can only compare it to the live options. The problem is what? Most people, well, first of all, we're not teaching history, right? And second of all, most people's historical perspective is the first page of a Google search. That's it. It's no wonder young people think that this is a good system. You know why they think it's a good system? The second myth, here it is. This is the piety myth. Something must be done even if it doesn't work. In other words, we just want to do something to make ourselves feel better, even if it doesn't work. That's the piety myth. We have to do something, even if it doesn't work. No, it'd be better to do something to actually solve the problem. So, got the heaven on earth myth, the piety myth. What about the winner-loser myth? The winner-loser myth. This is the myth that says in every economy, there's got to be a winner and a loser. Or there's only a finite piece of pie, and if I get a piece of it, that means you can't get that piece. There's a zero-sum game going on. If I get it, you can't have it. Is that really true in economics? No, it's not true. Okay, how about the greed myth? You guys heard of the greed myth? What's the greed myth? That capitalism functions on greed. Actually, no, capitalism doesn't function on greed. It functions on what we talked about last time, self-interest. And it presupposes that people have private property. If they don't have private property, how can they operate in their own self-interest to the degree that they could if they had their own private property? They can't. You have to have an incentive to keep some of the fruits of your labor. As J. Richards put it, he's saying even if the gap between the rich and the poor grows over time, it doesn't mean that the poor are getting poorer, because the total amount of wealth may have gone up. The relevant issue is whether the lot of the poor improves over time, not how close they are to the richest member of their society. One final myth we need to deal with is the static myth. What's the static myth? The static myth assumes that if you change something, everything's going to stay the same. There is a ripple effect. You change a tax policy, there's going to be a ripple effect of behavior. This is why when you sometimes decrease tax rates, you get more revenue to the government. Why? Because with more money in the economy, it creates economic activity, more people pay taxes, and more revenue comes into the government. Opposite, it might be counterintuitive. You go, well, how does that happen? If you increase rates, won't you get more? No, not necessarily. Now, there's a limit to this. You can't decrease it to zero and get that same increase. But this is what people don't understand. They don't understand the unintended consequences of their of their plan. If we give everybody single-payer universal health care, they don't think there's going to be any unintended consequences to that. What's going to happen to the profit motive of drug companies or new techniques in surgery? What's going to happen? It's going to be greatly reduced, which means the quality of healthcare goes down, which is exactly one of the things that they wanted to drive up. But by taking out the profit motive, they now therefore have lost that. People don't seem to understand their unintended consequences.